Hi guys, and welcome back to the first episode of my 20-minute takeover videos. Just to give you a little bit of context about what these will be. I know from myself and from others that there is a lot of content on Twitter and other platforms like podcasts, YouTube videos, that it's often hard for people to watch everyone. So I'm trying to cover a interesting topic once every 2 weeks. It will probably be in 20 minutes, just to give you a concise understanding for all you busy people who don't have as much time as maybe some of the other people to get all of your content in. So this week, as of this morning, a few hours ago, as of recording this, the fixtures came out for the season. I'm going to be looking at the first 10 matches because by this time, after these games, you'll have had 10 fixtures, 10 transfers, and most people have played their wild card. So you'll have had times to change your team up to then. So I'll be looking at the first 10 matches and looking at each of the teams in turn and telling you what I originally think about their fixtures and who we should be considering. So I'll have 20 minutes to try and do this as well as possible. So firstly, we'll talk about Arsenal. They play 3 of the top 6 in the first 10 matches, including as well as Newcastle away and Burnley at home in the first 2 games, and Watford away, all difficult games. There are players that I would consider in there if they're at the right budget, but we'll have to wait and see on that, and initially they're not in my original thinking. Next is Aston Villa. They look better with some less blues originally early on, but matches like Bournemouth at home, but Everton at home and Crystal Palace away in 3 and 4, they could be really difficult for Aston Villa, and I don't think the fixtures are as easy as maybe first thought, but these players, if at the right budget, could definitely help you with your bench. Bournemouth. Bournemouth have some very, very nice fixtures. They play Man City at home in game week 3, Arsenal away in game week 8, and Leicester away in game week 4. But apart from that, they're all fixtures that definitely you would consider picking players from this team. So they are definitely in my thinking, especially the likes of Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser. Next is Brighton. Now, Brighton have a fairly straightforward first 6 fixtures, apart from their away trip to Man City in game week 4. So this is definitely a team that early wildcarders should be considering, especially to beef up their bench. Yeah, so if you're planning on an early wildcard in game week 5, 6, 7, around that time, definitely look at Brighton. Burnley, their initial fixtures are very difficult with 3 of the Dip Blue fixtures, including Arsenal away, Wolves away, Liverpool at home in the first 4. But now this is a team that people will be considering after their wildcard. So Brighton would be looked at before your wildcard, and then a shift from Brighton to Burnley on your wildcard could really help you with your budget, as after 5 they have much easier fixtures. So now we move on to Chelsea, and with their away trip to Manchester United in game week 1, as well as trips to Wolves and a visit and a home match against Liverpool in game weeks 5 and 6, these fixtures have potential to make it look maybe more difficult than it already is when they do play Norwich, Sheffield United, Leicester, Brighton, Southampton, Burnley and Newcastle as well. The only other factor is that Chelsea play in the Super League Cup between game weeks 1 and game weeks 2, which could really hinder their performance early on as they try and beat Liverpool in this trophy. But they're definitely a team that I'm considering. Next, we move on to Crystal Palace. Now, a lot of people look at Crystal Palace for clean sheets. So in terms of clean sheets, I don't particularly like their fixtures too much. Everton at home, but Everton definitely can score. And then a newly promoted team, Sheffield United away, will definitely look to be getting on the score sheet. So defensively, I wouldn't be looking at them. And Crystal Palace tend to lack goals. So I'm not sure these are the fixtures that I'll be looking at early on. Now, Everton have probably the second best opening fixtures out of any team in the Premier League, playing only one of the top 6 teams, and that is Man City, who they play at home in game week 7. So I would absolutely be looking to have players from these teams in your squad going into game week 1, attack and defence. Next, we have Leicester, who I scored a 6 out of 10. They do play 4 top 6 teams in the opening 10. However, they do play Sheffield United and Bournemouth Newcastle, Burnley, Southampton and Wolves in this time as well. So it's not overly appealing, but definitely if you can bring in a player at the right price to help with rotation and to move your budget elsewhere, it is definitely worth a team to be looking at. Liverpool have a nice opening fixtures, definitely one to consider, especially if you're early wildcarding, because after game week 6 they do play Chelsea, Leicester, Man U and Tottenham, although for Liverpool we know now that they are very fixture proof and fixtures aren't really a problem. So of course Liverpool assets are firmly on my radar. Next, we move on to Man City, who have, in my opinion, the best opening schedule out of any team in the league. They play Tottenham at home and Everton away. They're only two really interesting fixtures, potentially Watford at home and Wolves at home, but definitely you will want at least two of these assets in your team. Man U, Chelsea at home in game week 1 and Liverpool at home in game week 9. The fixtures aren't overly difficult for them, although we do not really know how they will perform throughout them. But if you have faith that they'll bring back their form that we did see at parts of last season, they are definitely a team to consider. I gave them a 7 out of 10. Next, we move on to Newcastle, and I scored them the 3 out of 10, the second lowest on the whole out of the whole league. So they play Arsenal, Spurs and Liverpool all in their first 5 fixtures, as well as away to newly promoted Norwich. This is a team that I think there'll be much better options for you initially for your wildcard teams, for your game week 1 teams, and these fixtures do continue to stay bad up until game week 10. Newcastle will be a team that we look at to strengthen our teams over Christmas, as their fixtures at the beginning are very difficult, meaning their set Christmas fixtures will be much easier. Now we move on to Norwich. Norwich have some better fixtures in the mix of some much harder fixtures. They could help you with a cheap rotation on your bench, but definitely I wouldn't be looking to take a risk on starting a Norwich player when their fixtures look the way that they do. This is a similar story for Sheffield United. Their 3 opening fixtures are fairly nice, and by this time we should have a good understanding of who in this team is likely to be returning points for us. However, once we know that, they then have Chelsea away, Everton away and Liverpool at home and Arsenal at home in their next few fixtures. So once we know what their team's like, we then won't be wanting to pick them. So I would be staying away from Sheffield United to start with. Next, we move on to Southampton, and Southampton have some difficult away games here. Nothing really too special. Their easier games are away, and their hard games they play at home. So it's definitely not a team that I've been considering. I scored them a 4 out of 10. Next, we have Spurs, and we know what Spurs can be like in August, but we will definitely need to consider them. They have some hard fixtures. They're Man City and Arsenal away, Leicester away, but these are all surrounded by very, very nice home fixtures, like Aston Villa at home, Newcastle and Crystal Palace. So it's a sort of one-on, one-off basis with them, and it's still definitely something that a team that I would like to consider. So I scored them a 6 out of 10, and they're definitely a team to watch and look at and have potential if the prices of their midfielders especially are right. Next, we move on to Watford. Now, Watford have some nice fixtures and can definitely help with your rotation players. Their fixtures aren't strong enough to necessarily pick one straight away just to fill your team, but their first 4 you could definitely worthy of noting, and can strongly stake a claim to be put into your team. Penultimately, we have West Ham. Have some very nice fixtures. I scored them an 8 out of 10 after their initial Man City at home in game week 1. They play the only other top 6 team is Man U at home in game week 6, and we don't know how they'll be performing. So definitely look to considering West Ham assets, and it'll be interesting for us all to see the price of Fabianski this season and other cheap defensive options. For example, Declan Rice, and whether he gets reclassified into midfield. Finally, we have Wolves, and we know that Wolves can be fairly fixture proof. with the likes of Jimenez scoring 4 goals and assisting 4 against the top 6 last season. And taking this into account, their fixtures are definitely good enough for Wolves and for us to consider them. They do play Man U at home in game week 2 and Chelsea at home as well in game week 5. The only issue is their Europa League qualifiers, which take place throughout the summer and into the start of the season. So the question is whether their fitness will be ready for the start of the season and good enough for us to consider them in our teams, but definitely ones to watch. So overall, I've divided the teams into great, okay, and bad, as you can see on the right hand of the screen, and whether you should be considering these players. In great, I put the Bournemouth, Everton, Man City, Wolves, West Ham, and Liverpool. And with these 6 teams, you could easily make up your starting 11. With these teams, you'd likely have 3 Man City, probably 2 or 3 Liverpool, 2 or 3 Everton with their amazing fixtures to start off the season. So there's definitely a scope to include just your starting 11 from these teams and not have to risk the fixtures from the teams ranked lower down. But if we look at the Aston Villa, Brighton, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Leicester, Man U, Tottenham, Watford. These teams are definitely worth considering, and if you want to take a slight differential, I'm sure they will come from these teams. And initially, I would stay away from Arsenal, Burnley, Newcastle, Norwich, Sheffield United, and Southampton. These teams that have bad fixtures now will definitely be more interesting to us towards the Christmas period, so do keep an eye out on them when they do start playing. But initially, they are not teams that I am going to be considering. So this actually only took about 14 minutes. Just a quick recap to you then on my season last season and why maybe you should be listening to me or not listening to me. I finished 14k overall last season. I was up over 200k at about Christmas last season, and I made a very strong end to the season. I ended up winning my mini leagues, which I'm very happy about. So a strong 14k finish. But I couldn't have done it without a lot of this planning and help from spreadsheets like this on Twitter. So definitely follow me on Twitter at FPLTIPZ, and I retweet I retweet everything that I feel is useful or maybe not useful to you. But feel free to drop me a message either on YouTube here or on Twitter, and I will definitely be happy to answer your questions now, throughout the whole season, whenever it may be. But thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope this short video that I've uploaded, just to give you initial thought and to help you sort of sort your mind out as people begin to think about the season. I hope it's helpful for you, and I hope this series will be helpful to you along the way. Thanks, guys. See you.